You know that feeling when you wake up and everything seems perfect? The sun filtering through your custom plantation shutters, the smell of freshly ground Ethiopian coffee brewing in your smart kitchen, the sound of your successful husband getting ready for another day as a partner at his prestigious law firm. For 22 years, that was my life. Or at least, that's what I wanted everyone to believe. My name is Victoria Sterling. I'm 58 years old, and until 6 months ago, I lived what appeared to be a perfect upper-middle-class life in the heart of Charlotte, North Carolina's most exclusive neighborhood, Myers Park. My husband, Richard Sterling, everyone calls him Rich, which should have been my first clue, was a respected corporate attorney. Our son, Bradley, was a rising star in Charlotte's finance scene. His wife, Samantha, or Sam as she insisted we call her, was the daughter-in-law every mother dreams of. At least, that's what I thought. But let me take you back to where it all started unraveling. It was a Tuesday, I remember, because Tuesdays were when Richard had his late partnership meetings at the firm. I'd just returned from checking on my third bakery location. Yes, I built Victoria's Artesian Boulangerie from a single food truck to Charlotte's most talked-about bakery chain. That's important to remember. I wasn't just some society wife. I was a businesswoman. The house was too quiet, the kind of quiet that makes you notice things. The regulator clock in our formal living room, a family heirloom from Richard's side, ticked with unnatural loudness. Tick, tock, tick, tock. Each beat felt like it was counting down to something. Richard came home at 9:47 p.m. I remember because I'd been watching the clock, wondering why his meeting was running so late. He smelled different, not just of the expensive scotch he preferred, but underneath it, a scent. Floral, sweet, not my Chanel No. 5, something younger, trendier. Rough night with the Henderson merger, he mumbled, not meeting my eyes. He performed his tired routine, loosening his Ferragamo tie, dropping his briefcase exactly 3 feet from the door, always the same spot, collapsing into his favorite leather armchair without kissing me hello. "You must be exhausted," I said, my voice carefully neutral. "Can I get you anything?" "No, Victoria, I just need to sleep." He went upstairs, and I was left standing in our professionally decorated living room, surrounded by perfect things that suddenly felt like stage props. The next morning, I decided to do something I hadn't done in years: surprise Richard at his office with breakfast. I packed croissants from my flagship store, the almond ones he used to love, and drove downtown to the sleek glass building that housed Sterling, Whitlock and Associates. His assistant, Amanda, a woman who'd been with him for 15 years, looked genuinely surprised to see me. "Mrs. Sterling, Richard didn't mention you were coming." "I wanted to surprise him," I said, holding up the bakery box. Amanda's smile became strained. "He's in a very important client meeting, off-site. He won't be back until after lunch." "That's fine," I said, placing the box on her desk. As I turned to leave, something on Amanda's desk caught my eye. A receipt, partially covered by a file, from the Fig Tree, Charlotte's most romantic restaurant, known for its secluded booths and prohibitive prices. Dated yesterday, for 2 people. Richard had told me he'd grabbed a quick salad at his desk. I didn't say anything. I just smiled at Amanda, the perfect, polished smile I'd perfected over 30 years of charity galas and board meetings, and left. But on the drive home, my mind started connecting dots. The late nights that had become more frequent, the new cologne he'd started wearing, the way he'd recently updated his wardrobe to include more relaxed, modern pieces that looked like what Bradley wore, the way he'd become secretive with his phone, always keeping it face down, always taking it even to the bathroom. That afternoon, while doing laundry, yes, I still did my own laundry despite our housekeeper, some habits die hard, I found the first tangible piece of evidence. In the pocket of Richard's favorite Joseph Aboud suit pants, a cocktail napkin from The Cellar, a speakeasy-style bar in Southend. lipstick stains in a shade of red I didn't own, and that same floral scent. My hands shook as I held the napkin. This wasn't anxiety, this was certainty. A deep, primal knowing that every woman recognizes, but hopes never to feel. I called my oldest friend, Eleanor Van Doren. Eleanor knows everyone in Charlotte, and more importantly, she knows how to keep secrets. "Victoria, darling, you sound dreadful," she said when I called. "I need help, Eleanor. I think Richard is having an affair." The line was silent for a full 10 seconds. "Oh, sweetheart, are you sure?" "I need to be sure, and I need evidence for the prenup." Eleanor understood immediately. My prenuptial agreement, drafted by Richard's own firm, ironically, had an infidelity clause. Proof would change everything. "I know someone," Eleanor said quietly. "Discreet, former FBI. He does corporate investigations mostly, but give me his number." His name was Marcus Thorne. When I met him at a nondescript office park in the university area, he looked more like a college professor than a private investigator. Wire-rimmed glasses, tweed jacket despite the North Carolina heat, kind eyes. "Mrs. Sterling," he said, shaking my hand. His grip was firm. "Eleanor told me you might be coming." I slid a folder across his desk, photographs of the receipt, the napkin, Richard's schedule for the last 3 months with suspicious gaps highlighted. Marcus reviewed them without expression. "You have reason to believe it's someone connected to your family?" he asked gently. The question took me aback. "What makes you say that?" "The pattern, the familiarity with your husband's schedule, the access. This doesn't read like a random affair, Mrs. Sterling. This reads like something more intimate." A cold dread settled in my stomach. "How long will it take to know?" "With your permission to access certain digital footprints, a week, maybe less." I signed the retainer agreement with a hand that barely trembled. The businesswoman in me was taking over. This was due diligence, an audit of my marriage.
3 days later, Marcus called me to his office. "What I'm about to show you will be difficult," he warned as I sat down. He turned his monitor toward me. On screen, a map of Charlotte with glowing dots tracking Richard's movements. The data was damning. "Your husband's phone," Marcus explained, "has been visiting this address in Dilworth 3 times a week for the past 4 months. He zoomed in on a charming bungalow with a perfectly manicured garden. The property is owned by an LLC registered in Delaware, but I traced the payments back to a joint account." "A joint account?" My voice sounded strange to my own ears. "Shared with Samantha Sterling, your daughter-in-law." The room tilted. I gripped the edge of the desk. "Show me." Music becomes dramatic, emotional. Marcus pulled up financial records, wire transfers from Richard's business account to home improvement stores, furniture purchases, even utility bills for the bungalow. "This is their love nest?" I managed to ask. "More than that, Mrs. Sterling. Look at this." He pulled up another document. "They've been consulting with a reproductive endocrinologist. Fertility treatments, paid for in cash." The pieces clicked together with terrible clarity. Samantha had been telling Bradley she wasn't ready for children, that her career in interior design was too demanding. The arguments they'd been having, Bradley's confusion and hurt. "They're trying to have a child together?" The words tasted like ashes. "Based on the medical bills and the timeline, I believe Samantha may already be pregnant." Long pause. I sat there for what felt like hours, watching the evidence unfold on screen. Photos taken with long lenses, Richard and Samantha grocery shopping together like a married couple, holding hands walking through Freedom Park, kissing in the driveway of the bungalow. But the most damning evidence was digital. Marcus had accessed their messaging history, the things they said about me. From Samantha, "When are you going to tell the old bat? I'm tired of pretending to like her dry-ass croissants." Richard's reply, Soon, baby. Once the bakery valuation is complete. We need her signature on the expansion documents first. Samantha. And Bradley? He'll understand eventually. He's always been closer to his mother anyway. They weren't just having an affair. They were planning a takeover of my business, my family, my life. Music swells to emotional peak, then cuts abruptly. I drove home in a state of suspended animation. The woman who walked into my 6,000-square-foot colonial home wasn't Victoria Sterling, beloved wife and mother. She was someone else, someone capable of things the old Victoria couldn't imagine. I went straight to my home office, the one Richard never entered because he said it was my space. I locked the door. On my computer, I pulled up every business document, every financial record, every piece of correspondence related to Victoria's artisan boulangerie. Marcus was right. Richard had been quietly maneuvering for months, subtle changes to our operating agreement, updates to insurance policies, streamlining of vendor contracts, all designed to shift control. But Richard had made one fatal mistake. He'd underestimated me. The shy art history major he married had become a shrewd businesswoman, and I had protected my assets with the ferocity of a mother bear. Sound of papers shuffling. Still, I needed more. I needed them to admit it, on record, in a way that would hold up not just in divorce court, but in the court of public opinion. That's when I remembered the lubricant. A month earlier, I'd borrowed Richard's Lexus to pick up a large bakery order when my car was in the shop. Reaching for sunglasses in the glove compartment, my fingers had brushed against a half-empty tube of KY jelly. At the time, I'd told myself it must be old, from before our intimacy had dwindled to nothing. Now I knew better. A plan began to form in my mind. Not a hot-headed confrontation, but a cold, calculated exposure. Music becomes tense, anticipatory. I told Richard I needed to visit our potential Nashville franchise location for 3 days. The real estate deal is moving faster than expected, I lied smoothly. His reaction was telling. Not concern for me traveling alone, not disappointment at my absence, relief, barely concealed excitement. "Of course, Victoria," he said, not looking up from his tablet. "Your business needs you." That night, I planted 3 devices in our bedroom, a voice-activated recorder in the base of the Tiffany lamp on my nightstand, a pinhole camera in the smoke detector, and a GPS tracker in the lining of Richard's briefcase, the one he always took with him. The next morning, as my Uber pulled away from the house, I watched through the app with Richard's car left our driveway exactly 22 minutes after I left. He wasn't going to the office. He was going to the Dilworth bungalow. From my actual location, a suite at the Ballantine Hotel 20 minutes away, I watched the feeds. Marcus had provided me with real-time access to his surveillance. I saw Samantha's white Range Rover pull into the bungalow driveway, saw Richard greet her at the door with a kiss that lasted just a bit too long, watched through the camera Marcus had somehow placed in their living room, where they sat close on the sofa, reviewing documents. Sound of faint audio from recording. Samantha's voice. "The lawyer says the fertility treatments should work this cycle. Can you imagine? A real baby, not that fake life with Victoria." Richard. "Once she signs the bakery refinancing papers next week, we'll have the capital to really start our life. I've already spoken to Bradley about a trial separation." Samantha. "Does he suspect about us?" Richard. "Bradley, he's too busy with his hedge fund to notice his own wife is pregnant with his father's child." I muted the audio. The cruelty was breathtaking. This wasn't just betrayal. This was annihilation. Pause. Deep breath.
The day of my return from Nashville, I stopped by the bakery supply warehouse. Among the 50-pound bags of flour and industrial-sized containers of vanilla, I found what I needed: a tube of industrial-grade cyanoacrylate adhesive, the kind used to assemble commercial bakery equipment. It dried clear, it bonded almost instantly, and it was virtually impossible to remove without special solvents. That afternoon, I swapped the contents of the lubricant tube in Richard's glove compartment. My hands were steady, my breathing calm. This wasn't an act of passion, it was a strategic maneuver. The final piece required Bradley, my sweet, brilliant, oblivious son. I invited him for lunch at the bakery, sending my staff away early. "Bradley, you look tired," he said, genuine concern in his eyes. "Is the Nashville expansion too much?" "Bradley," I said, taking both his hands, "I need to tell you something, and I need you to trust that what happens next is for everyone's good." I showed him a carefully curated selection of evidence, enough to prove the affair, but not the pregnancy, not yet. His reaction was worse than I'd imagined. The color drained from his face, his hands shook. "Dad and Sam? How long?" "Months, maybe longer. But why?" "Because some people are empty inside," I said gently, "and they try to fill that emptiness by taking what belongs to others." I explained my plan, not all of it, just enough. Bradley looked at me with new eyes. "You've known, and you're this calm?" "I've had time to process, darling. Now it's your turn." The next day, I pretended to leave for another site visit. Instead, I went to my friend Eleanor's house across the street, where I had a perfect view of my own home. At 10 a.m., right on schedule, Samantha arrived. She used her key, the one she had for emergencies when you and Dad are traveling. Through the audio feed, I heard everything. The familiar sounds of their betrayal in my bed, in the room where I'd slept beside Richard for 22 years. Then Samantha's scream, sharp, panicked. "What is this? Richard, I can't move. We're stuck together." Richard's curses, the sound of struggle, more panic. That's when I triggered the smoke alarm remotely, not a real fire, just a small smoke bomb placed in the HVAC return vent, enough to set off every detector in the house. Within minutes, Charlotte Fire Department Engine 5 was rolling down our quiet street, and who was leading the crew? My son, Bradley, in full gear, just as we'd arranged. What Bradley and his crew found in that bedroom became Charlotte legend by lunchtime. Richard and Samantha, naked, literally glued together in the most compromising position imaginable, writhing in panic on the king-sized bed Bradley had given us for our 25th anniversary. The body cam footage, later leaked to local media, showed it all. Their humiliation, their desperation, Bradley's cold, professional demeanor as he directed his crew to extract them, his voice never wavering even as he cut his own father free with trauma shears. The divorce was the easiest part. The prenup's infidelity clause gave me everything: the house, the investments, full ownership of Victoria's artisan boulangerie. Richard was left with his law partnership and the bungalow in Dilworth, now thoroughly encased in scandal. Samantha left Charlotte altogether. The pregnancy rumor, which I may have mentioned to a few well-connected friends at the Charlotte Country Club, made her social life untenable. Bradley moved into my guest house. We talk now in a way we never did before. He's seeing a therapist. He's taking over more responsibility at the bakery. We're healing together. As for me, the scandal in Myers Park turned out to be the best marketing my bakery chain ever had. Victoria's resilient raspberry scones sold out for 6 weeks straight. My memoir proposal fetched a 7-figure advance, and the number of women who've approached me with their own stories of betrayal, let's just say I'm starting a nonprofit. People ask me if I'm angry. I was. Now I'm just free. The tube of glue wasn't about cruelty, it was a metaphor. They were already stuck, in their lies, in their deception, in their pathetic little fantasy. I just made it physical. I made it visible. To every woman watching this who's sensing the first cracks in her perfect life, document everything. protect your estates, trust your intuition, and always remember the quiet wife is often the one taking notes. And to Richard, if you're watching, the old Bat's croissants are selling better than ever, and they were never dry. You just lost your ability to taste anything real years ago.
If this story of betrayal and resilience resonated with you, I want to know where in America you're listening from. Drop your city and state in the comments below. For more real stories of women taking back their power, hitting that subscribe button means everything to this channel. We're building a community of resilience here. Don't miss the 2 new stories on your screen right now. One involves a country club, a prenup, and a hidden camera in Aspen. The other, a twin sister's betrayal that will leave you breathless. And if you appreciated this deep dive into a full, unedited story of revenge and redemption, consider supporting with a super thanks. It directly fuels our ability to bring you these comprehensive, detailed narratives. Remember, sometimes the quietest people have the loudest strength when pushed. Until next time, stay strong, stay vigilant, and always, always protect your own bakery. With gratitude and solidarity, Victoria Sterling.